Captain Lee Minho floated in his damaged fighter ship, watching the last Zephyrian battlecruiser explode into a million pieces of burning metal. The silence of space felt strange after 3 days of constant laser fire and screaming engines. His hands shook slightly as he turned off the weapon systems. It was over. The war that had killed millions across 3 star systems was finally finished. The communication screen flickered to life, showing the wrinkled face of Chancellor Vex from the Galactic Council. Behind him stood representatives from dozens of alien species, all looking at Minho with something between amazement and disbelief. "Captain Lee Minho of Earth," Chancellor Vex spoke in his deep, rumbling voice, "you have done what our combined fleets could not accomplish in 5 years. You single-handedly destroyed the Zephyrian war machine and saved billions of lives." Minho rubbed his tired eyes. He had been awake for 72 hours straight, surviving on energy drinks and pure determination. "I just did what needed to be done, Chancellor," the alien leader smiled, showing his sharp teeth. Modest, as always. But heroism of this magnitude cannot go unrewarded. The Galactic Council has decided to offer you anything your heart desires. The screen split to show various options. Mountains of gold and precious crystals that could buy entire planets, territory that would make him ruler of star systems, advanced technology that could extend his life for centuries. But what caught everyone's attention were the images of alien princesses from the most powerful kingdoms in the galaxy. "These are the most beautiful princesses from our greatest civilizations," Chancellor Vex explained. "Each one represents an alliance that would make Earth incredibly powerful. Princess Zara of the Crystal People, whose skin shines like diamonds. Princess Lyra of the Star Dancers, who moves like liquid light. Princess Nova of the Fire Kingdom, whose beauty burns brighter than suns." The alien dignitaries nodded approvingly. This was how things worked in galactic politics. Heroes married beautiful princesses, creating powerful alliances. It was tradition stretching back thousands of years. Minho studied each image carefully. The princesses were indeed stunning by any standard. Their perfect features and graceful forms represented the peak of their species' evolution. Marrying. Any of them would bring Earth respect and power beyond imagination, but then his eyes fell on a small image, tucked away in the corner of the display. It showed a figure that made several aliens look away in disgust. Princess Yuna of the Krillian Empire stood awkwardly in the photo, her grey, bumpy skin looking rough like old tree bark. Multiple eyes of different sizes dotted her face, and bony ridges protruded from her skull. By galactic standards, she was considered hideous. "I choose Princess Yuna," Minho said quietly. The silence that followed was deafening. Chancellor Vex blinked all 4 of his eyes rapidly. "I'm sorry, Captain. Could you repeat that?" "Princess Yuna of the Krillian Empire. That's my choice," gasps echoed through the communication channel. Alien representatives whispered frantically to each other in languages that sounded like angry buzzing. Some looked offended, others confused, and a few seemed genuinely concerned for Minho's mental state. "Captain," Chancellor Vex said carefully, "perhaps the stress of battle has affected your judgment. The Krillian princess is, well, her people are known for their unfortunate appearance. Surely you meant to choose one of the others." Minho shook his head firmly. "No, Princess Yuna is my final choice." In the background he could see Princess Yuna herself, looking shocked and confused. She had probably never expected anyone to choose her over her more attractive sisters. The greatest hero in galactic history had made the most surprising choice anyone could imagine. Within hours of Captain Lee Minho's shocking announcement, news feeds across the galaxy exploded with the story. Alien news anchors struggled to hide their disbelief as they reported the incredible decision. On the crystal world of Luxara, the beautiful Princess Zara threw her diamond tiara across her royal chambers in anger and confusion. "How could he choose that ugly creature over me?" She screamed at her advisors, who had no answer to give. On social media platforms spanning hundreds of worlds, aliens posted endless memes and jokes. The most popular one showed Minho's human face next to Princess Yuna's bumpy grey features, with the caption, "When humans say beauty is in the eye of the beholder, they really mean it." The post received billions of reactions. mostly laughing emojis from various alien species. Talk show hosts had a field day with the news. On the popular show Galactic Gossip, the six-armed host Crix made joke after joke about human eyesight and taste. "Maybe humans need to visit our optometrists more often," he said, causing his alien audience to burst into laughter that sounded like a combination of honking and whistling. But nowhere was the confusion greater than in the Krillian royal palace itself. Princess Yuna sat in her chambers, staring at her reflection in the mirror with all six of her eyes. Her sisters had always been chosen for diplomatic marriages, political alliances, and trade agreements. She had always been the one left behind, the embarrassing sister that nobody wanted to acknowledge. Her youngest sister, Princess Hana, entered the room with a concerned expression. "Yuna, are you okay? The whole palace is talking about what happened." "I don't understand it," Yuna said softly, touching her rough grey skin. "He could have chosen anyone. Princess Zara is beautiful enough to make stars weep. Princess Lyra moves like poetry in motion. Why would the greatest hero in the galaxy choose me?" Even her own family seemed puzzled by the decision. Her father, King Jorak, paced his throne room nervously. "This must be some kind of human strategy we don't understand," he muttered to his advisors. "Perhaps they see political advantage in marrying the least desirable princess. Maybe it's meant to insult us somehow." The Krillian nobles whispered behind closed doors about whether to even allow the marriage to proceed. Some thought it was a joke that had gone too far. Others worried that accepting such an obviously reluctant groom would bring shame to their empire. Meanwhile, Captain Minho arrived at the Krillian homeworld aboard a simple transport ship, refusing the grand ceremonial vessels that other species had offered him. When he stepped onto the landing platform, hundreds of alien reporters pushed forward with their cameras and recording devices. "Captain Minho," they shouted, "do you regret your choice? Will you change your mind when you meet her in person? Is this some kind of human mating ritual we don't understand?" But Minho surprised everyone with his response. When Princess Yuna was brought to meet him, accompanied by guards who seemed embarrassed to be there, he smiled warmly and bowed respectfully. He didn't flinch when he saw her appearance up close. He didn't make any jokes or cruel comments like many aliens expected. Instead, he took her rough grey hand gently in his and said, "Princess Yuna, it's an honor to meet you. I've heard you're quite intelligent and well-educated. I'm looking forward to getting to know you better." The alien reporters stood there with their mouths hanging open. This wasn't how the story was supposed to go. Heroes were supposed to realize their mistake and ask for a different bride. They weren't supposed to treat ugly princesses with genuine respect and kindness. Princess Yuna herself seemed the most shocked of all. For the first time in her life, someone was looking at her without disgust or pity in their eyes. The royal gardens of the Krillian palace were designed to keep visitors away rather than welcome them. Twisted black trees with thorny branches created dark shadows, and the flowers gave off a smell that most aliens found unpleasant. It was the perfect place for Princess Yuna to spend her time alone, away from the disgusted looks of visiting dignitaries. Captain Minho found her there the next morning, sitting on a stone bench and reading from a thick electronic tablet. She looked up nervously as he approached, clearly expecting him to make some excuse and leave quickly like everyone else did. "Mind if I join you?" Minho asked, gesturing to the empty space on the bench. Yuna nodded silently, moving over to give him room. She tried to hide her tablet, but Minho caught a glimpse of what she was reading. His eyebrows raised in surprise. "Is that the Battle of Kepler Station?" he asked, pointing to the tactical diagrams on her screen. Yuna's multiple eyes widened. "You recognize it?" "Of course. It's one of the most brilliant defensive strategies ever recorded. Admiral Chen held off 3 enemy fleets with just 12 ships." Minho leaned closer to look at the display. "But you're not just reading about it. These are your own analysis notes, aren't they?" For the first time since meeting her, Yuna's voice showed excitement instead of nervousness. "Yes, I've been studying that battle for months. Everyone says Admiral Chen was lucky, but it wasn't luck at all. Look at how he positioned his ships. Here." She pointed to the screen with one of her clawed fingers. "He used the asteroid field to create artificial choke points, forcing the enemy to attack in single file." Minho studied her notes carefully. They were incredibly detailed, and showed a deep understanding of military tactics that impressed him. You're absolutely right. And this analysis about the timing of his retreat, I never thought about it that way before. Really? Yuna asked, her voice filled with hope. You're not just being polite. Not at all, this is excellent work. Minho scrolled through more of her notes. How long have you been studying military history? Since I was young, Yuna admitted. My sisters studied art, music, and dancing. Things that would make them attractive to potential husbands. But I knew nobody would ever want to marry me for my looks, so I studied what interested me instead. They spent the next 2 hours discussing famous battles, successful strategies, and military philosophy. Yuna's knowledge was vast, and her insights were sharp. She had clearly spent years analyzing conflicts across the galaxy, learning from both, victories and defeats. Your tactics during the Zephyrian War were incredible, Yuna said eventually. The way you used their own formation against them in the final battle was pure genius. Minho shook his head. It was mostly desperation. I was outnumbered 50-1. But that's what made it brilliant. Yuna's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. You turned your weakness into strength. When they surrounded you, you made yourself the center of a sphere and attacked in all directions at once. They couldn't coordinate their attacks without hitting each other. As they talked, Minho noticed how Yuna's entire demeanor changed. When she was excited about a topic, she forgot to be self-conscious about her appearance. Her intelligence shone through her words, and her passion for learning was infectious. Can I ask you something? Yuna said quietly after a pause in their conversation. Of course. Why did you really choose me? And please don't lie to spare my feelings. I've heard enough false kindness to last a lifetime. Minho was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. On Earth, we have a saying, beauty is only skin deep, but character goes to the bone. When I looked at all those princesses, I saw their outer beauty, but I also saw their records. Most of them had never done anything meaningful with their lives except look pretty. And me? Yuna asked. Your file mentioned that you had studied military strategy and that you often advised your father on defense matters. That told me you had substance, depth, something worth knowing. He looked at her directly. I fought alongside beautiful soldiers who were cowards, and I've served with scarred veterans who were the bravest people I've ever known. Humans learn early that what matters isn't how someone looks, but who they are inside. Tears began forming in several of Yuna's eyes. Nobody had ever talked to her this way before. Nobody had ever seen value in her mind, rather than focusing on her unfortunate appearance. Thank you, she whispered, for seeing me as more than just a monster. Retry SF. The royal gardens of the Krillian Palace were designed to keep visitors away, rather than welcome them. Twisted black trees with thorny branches created dark shadows, and the flowers gave off a smell that most aliens found unpleasant. It was the perfect place for Princess Yuna to spend her time alone, away from the disgusted looks of visiting dignitaries. Captain Minho found her there the next morning, sitting on a stone bench and reading from a thick electronic tablet. She looked up nervously as he approached, clearly expecting him to make some excuse and leave quickly like everyone else did. Mind if I join you? Minho asked, gesturing to the empty space on the bench. Yuna nodded silently, moving over to give him room. She tried to hide her tablet, but Minho caught a glimpse of what she was reading. His eyebrows raised in surprise. Is that the Battle of Kepler Station? He asked, pointing to the tactical diagrams on her screen. Yuna's multiple eyes widened. You recognize it? Of course, it's one of the most brilliant defensive strategies ever recorded. Admiral Chen held off 3 enemy fleets with just 12 ships. Minho leaned closer to look at the display. But you're not just reading about... These are your own analysis notes, aren't they? For the first time since meeting her, Yuna's voice showed excitement instead of nervousness. Yes, I've been studying that battle for months. Everyone says Admiral Chen was lucky, but it wasn't luck at all. Look at how he positioned his ships. Here. She pointed to the screen with one of her clawed fingers. He used the asteroid field to create artificial choke points, forcing the enemy to attack in single file. Minho studied her notes carefully. They were incredibly detailed and showed a deep understanding of military tactics that impressed him. You're absolutely right. And this analysis about the timing of his retreat, I never thought about it that way before. Really? Yuna asked, her voice filled with hope. You're not just being polite. Not at all, this is excellent work. Minho scrolled through more of her notes. How long have you been studying military history? Since I was young, Yuna admitted. My sisters studied art, music, and dancing. Things that would make them attractive to potential husbands. But I knew nobody would ever want to marry me for my looks, so I studied what interested me instead. They spent the next 2 hours discussing famous battles, successful strategies, and military philosophy. Yuna's knowledge was vast, and her insights were sharp. She had clearly spent years analyzing conflicts across the galaxy, learning from both, victories and defeats. Your tactics during the Zephyrian War were incredible, Yuna said eventually. The way you used their own formation against them in the final battle was pure genius. Minho shook his head. It was mostly desperation. I was outnumbered 50-1. But that's what made it brilliant. Yuna's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. You turned your weakness into strength. When they surrounded you, you made yourself the center of a sphere and attacked in all directions at once. They couldn't coordinate their attacks without hitting each other. As they talked, Minho noticed how Yuna's entire demeanor changed. When she was excited about a topic, she forgot to be self-conscious about her appearance. Her intelligence shone through her words, and her passion for learning was infectious. Can I ask you something? Yuna said quietly after a pause in their conversation. Of course. Why did you really choose me? And please don't lie to spare my feelings. I've heard enough false kindness to last a lifetime. Minho was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. On Earth, we have a saying, beauty is only skin deep, but character goes to the bone. When I looked at all those princesses, I saw their outer beauty, but I also saw their records. Most of them had never done anything meaningful with their lives except look pretty. And me? Yuna asked. Your file mentioned that you had studied military strategy and that you often advised your father on defense matters. That told me you had substance, depth, something worth knowing. He looked at her directly. I've fought alongside beautiful soldiers who were cowards, and I've served with scarred veterans who were the bravest people I've ever known. Humans learn early that what matters isn't how someone looks, but who they are inside. Tears began forming in several of Yuna's eyes. Nobody had ever talked to her this way before. Nobody had ever seen value in her mind, rather than focusing on her unfortunate appearance. Thank you, she whispered, for seeing me as more than just a monster. Retricerf, the Grand Cathedral of Unity, on the neutral planet of Concordia, had never hosted such a strange wedding. Massive crystal screens floated throughout the ceremony hall, broadcasting the event to over 400 worlds across the galaxy. Alien reporters from dozens of species crowded the press sections, their cameras focused on what they expected to be the most awkward royal wedding in galactic history. Princess Yuna stood at the altar, in a flowing white gown that had been specially designed to complement her unique features. The dress couldn't hide her grey, bumpy skin or her multiple eyes, but somehow it made her look dignified rather than frightening. Her hands trembled slightly as she waited for Captain Minho to join her. In the audience, alien dignitaries whispered behind their hands and tentacles. The beautiful Princess Zara sat in the front row, still unable to believe she had been rejected for this creature. Ambassador Kex of the Stellar Alliance leaned over to his companion and muttered, I still think the human has suffered some kind of brain damage from the war. But when Minho walked down the aisle in his formal Earth military uniform, something unexpected happened. He wasn't walking like a man going to his doom. His steps were confident, and when he saw Yuna waiting for him, he smiled genuinely. Not the fake smile that diplomats used, but a real expression of happiness. The ceremony began with traditional galactic vows, but Minho had requested permission to add human elements as well. When it came time for personal vows, he took Yuna's rough hands in his and spoke directly to her, ignoring the hundreds of cameras recording every word. Yuna, he said clearly, when I first met you, I saw something that everyone else missed. I saw intelligence, kindness, and strength. You've spent your life being told you weren't good enough, but I want to spend my life showing you how wrong they were. Yuna's voice shook as she responded, Minho, You saw me when I was invisible. You valued my mind when others only saw my appearance. I promised to stand beside you not as a burden, but as an equal partner." The alien audience fell silent. This wasn't the awkward, reluctant ceremony they had expected. These two people were actually choosing each other, not just going through the motions of a political arrangement. When they kissed to seal their marriage, the cameras captured something that surprised everyone. Minho didn't hesitate or pull away quickly. He kissed his new wife with the same tenderness that any loving husband would show. The reception that followed was held in the palace's great hall, with tables arranged for hundreds of guests from across the galaxy. The conversations were polite but strained, with most aliens still trying to understand what they had just witnessed. Everything changed when a crisis erupted during the dinner. Ambassador Vex approached the head table looking panicked. "Captain Minho, we have a serious problem. The Andromedans and the Centaurians are about to start a trade war. They're threatening to leave the reception and cut off all diplomatic relations." Minho started to stand, but Yuna gently placed a hand on his arm. "May I?" she asked quietly. Before he could answer, she was already walking toward the arguing diplomats. The two alien groups were shouting at each other in their native languages, waving their arms and tentacles angrily. The dispute was over mining rights in a disputed asteroid belt that both sides claimed. "Honored ambassadors," Yuna said, her voice cutting through the noise. "I've studied the legal documents regarding the Kepler belt dispute. The problem isn't who owns the asteroids, but how to share them fairly. The Andromedan ambassador, a tall being with blue skin and silver eyes, looked down at her dismissively. "Princess, this is a matter for experienced negotiators, not—" "The Kepler belt contains 3 types of valuable minerals," Yuna continued, ignoring his condescending tone. "Dilithium crystals, rare earth metals, and quantum particles. Instead of fighting over territory, why not divide by resource type?" She pulled out her tablet and quickly sketched a proposal. "Andromedans get exclusive rights to dilithium mining, which your people need for your energy systems. Centaurians get the rare earth metals, which are essential for your manufacturing. Both groups share the quantum particles 50-50 since they're the most valuable." The two ambassadors looked at her proposal, then at each other. The Centaurian representative, an insect-like being with compound eyes, studied the numbers carefully. This could actually work. "It's more profitable for both sides than fighting," Yuna explained. "And it sets a precedent for future disputes, cooperation instead of conflict." Within minutes, she had turned a potential war into a mutually beneficial agreement. The other guests at the reception watched in amazement as the two alien ambassadors shook hands and agreed to sign the treaty. As news of the diplomatic breakthrough spread through the reception, aliens who had been whispering about the strange bride began looking at Princess Yuna with new respect. The human hadn't just married a monster, he had married a genius. 3 weeks after the wedding, Captain Minho and Princess Yuna were settling into their new life together in the Krillian royal palace. The massive stone building had been Yuna's prison for most of her life, but with Minho there, it finally felt like a home. They spent their mornings discussing military history and their evenings walking through the gardens, talking about everything from Earth's culture to Krillian traditions. Ondi. This particular evening, they were in the palace library when the attack began. The lights suddenly went out, plunging the ancient building into darkness. Emergency lighting flickered on moments later, casting eerie red shadows across the walls. "Security breach in sectors 7 and 9, announced the palace's automated defense system. "All residents proceed to safe rooms immediately." Minho's military training kicked in instantly. He grabbed Yuna's hand and started moving toward the nearest secure location, but she pulled him back. "No, this way," she said urgently. "The safe rooms are too obvious. They'll expect us to go there." They ran through corridors that Yuna knew better than anyone, her multiple eyes giving her better vision in the dim emergency lighting. Behind them, they could hear the sounds of battle as palace guards engaged the intruders. The attackers were professionals. They moved through the palace like shadows, wearing advanced stealth suits that made them nearly invisible. Their weapons were unlike anything Minho had seen before, crystalline blades that hummed with deadly energy. "These aren't random criminals," Minho whispered as they hid behind a marble pillar. "Someone sent them specifically for us." One of the assassins appeared at the end of the hallway, scanning the area with a device that could detect body heat. The alien was tall and thin, with skin that seemed to shift colors like a chameleon. In its hand was one of the strange crystal weapons. Minho stepped out to confront the attacker, but he had underestimated their speed. The assassin moved like liquid lightning, slashing with the crystal blade before Minho could even draw his own weapon. The blade cut deep across his chest, and immediately he felt something horrible spreading through his body. The crystal wasn't just sharp, it was coated with a poison specifically designed to kill humans. His vision blurred as the toxin raced through his bloodstream, attacking his nervous system. He collapsed to the floor, his body convulsing as the poison did its deadly work. "Minho!" Yuna screamed, rushing to his side. The assassin raised the blade to finish him off, but palace guards finally arrived and drove the attacker back with laser fire. Yuna knelt beside her husband, watching in horror as his skin turned pale and his breathing became shallow. This particular poison was created by the Shadow Consortium, a group of alien criminals who specialized in killing specific species. There was no known antidote for humans. "Get the medical team!" she shouted at the guards, but they both knew it would be too late. The poison worked in minutes, not hours. That's when something impossible happened. Yuna placed her hands on Minho's chest, directly over the wound. Her grey, bumpy skin began to glow with a soft golden light that seemed to come from within. The light spread from her hands into Minho's body, and where it touched, the poison began to disappear. The palace guards stepped back in shock. Krillians weren't supposed to have healing powers. Their species was known for being tough and resilient, but they couldn't cure poison or heal wounds through touch. But Yuna wasn't just healing Minho. She was absorbing the poison into herself. Her own body began to convulse as the deadly toxin entered her system, but somehow she was able to neutralize it. The golden light grew brighter, and Minho's wound began to close. "Princess, what are you doing?" one of the guards gasped. "How is this possible?" Yuna didn't answer. All her concentration was focused on saving her husband's life. Sweat beaded on her rough skin as she fought to process the poison. That should have killed them both. Her multiple eyes began to glow with the same golden light that was flowing from her hands. Slowly, Minho's color returned to normal. His breathing became steady, and his eyes fluttered open. The deadly wound on his chest had completely healed, leaving only a faint scar. "Yuna?" he whispered, reaching up to touch her face. "What did you do?" She collapsed beside him, exhausted from whatever power she had just used. "I couldn't lose you," she said softly. "Not when I just found someone who sees me as more than a monster." The guards helped them both to their feet, but they couldn't stop staring at Princess Yuna. In all the recorded history of the Krillian species, no one had ever demonstrated healing abilities like this. It was as if she had powers that her own people didn't know existed. As word of the miraculous healing spread through the palace, aliens throughout the galaxy began to wonder, who exactly was Princess Yuna and what other secrets was she hiding? In the days following the assassination attempt, Minho noticed strange changes in his wife. Princess Yuna seemed different somehow, like she was struggling to maintain something that required constant effort. When she thought no one was looking, her grey, bumpy skin would shimmer with hints of golden light, as if something brilliant was trying to break through from underneath. The first time Minho saw it clearly was during breakfast in their private dining room. Yuna was reading reports about the failed attack, her multiple eyes scanning the documents quickly. As she concentrated, her skin began to glow softly, and for just a moment, her rough features seemed to shift into something else entirely. "Yuna," Minho said gently, "are you feeling all right? You look different." She looked up quickly and the golden shimmer disappeared instantly. "I'm fine," she said, but her voice sounded strained, "just tired from the other night." But Minho had been a soldier long enough to recognize when someone was hiding something important. He decided not to push the issue, knowing that Yuna would tell him when she was ready. Over the next few days, the changes became more obvious. During their evening walks in the garden, Yuna's eyes would occasionally flash with depths of knowledge that seemed far older than her years. When she spoke about historical events, she sometimes used phrases like, "when we first encountered that species," or "in the early days of our civilization," as if she had been there personally. The breaking point came during a diplomatic meeting with representatives from the Galactic Council. They were discussing new trade agreements when one of the alien ambassadors made a dismissive comment about primitive species that needed guidance from their betters. Yuna's reaction was immediate and shocking. Her skin flared with golden light, and her voice took on a tone of ancient authority that made everyone in the room fall silent. "Primitive," she said, her multiple eyes blazing with inner fire. "I have watched civilizations rise and fall across this galaxy for longer than your species has existed. I have seen the birth of stars and the death of worlds. Do not speak to me of what is primitive." The ambassador backed away in fear, clearly sensing power that shouldn't exist in a supposedly weak Krillian princess. Yuna realized what she had done and quickly suppressed the golden light, but it was too late. Everyone in the room had seen her true nature peek through. That night, Minho found Yuna sitting alone in their bedroom, staring out at the stars through the large window. Her skin was flickering between grey and gold, as if she could no longer maintain the disguise that had hidden her true self for so long. "It's time you told me the truth, isn't it?" Minho said softly, sitting beside her on the bed. Yuna sighed deeply, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of centuries. "My people aren't what we appear to be, Minho. The Krillians, you see, the ugly, bumpy-skinned beings that everyone mocks and avoids. We're not really like this." She stood up and walked to the center of the room. Slowly, deliberately, she let her disguise drop. Her grey skin began to glow with brilliant golden light, and her rough features softened into something beautiful beyond description. Her multiple eyes became pools of starlight, and her entire being radiated wisdom and power. "This is what we really are," she said, her voice now carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate with the very fabric of space. "We are the Luminari, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. We have been hiding our true forms for over 1,000 years." Minho stared in amazement. His wife was magnificent, a being of pure light and energy that made the other alien princesses look ordinary by comparison. "Why hide?" he asked. "Why pretend to be something you're not?" Yuna's light dimmed slightly as sadness crossed her features. "Because beauty and power make you a target. When we first revealed ourselves to the galaxy, younger species tried to capture us, study us, use our abilities for their own purposes. They wanted to harvest our energy, force us to heal their sick, make us solve their problems." She resumed her disguise, becoming the grey, bumpy-skinned princess again. "So we learned to hide. We made ourselves appear ugly and weak, so that other species would leave us alone. We scattered across the galaxy, pretending to be different races, watching and waiting." "Waiting for what?" Minho asked. "For a species mature enough to see past appearances. For people who could value character over beauty, wisdom over power." She looked at him with all 6 of her eyes. "For humans." Minho reached out and took her rough grey hand in his. "So when I chose you over the beautiful princesses, you proved that humanity was ready to know the truth," Yuna finished. "Your people have something that most species in the galaxy lack. The ability to see worth in the unexpected, beauty in the unconventional. We've been testing various species for centuries, but only humans consistently choose based on character, rather than appearance." "How many of you are there?" Minho asked. "More than you might think. We're scattered throughout the galaxy, hidden in plain sight. Some of us serve as advisors to kings and presidents, pretending to be ugly but wise creatures. Others work as teachers, mechanics, farmers, always disguised, always watching. And now?" Yuna smiled, and for a moment, her true golden light shone through her disguise. "Now we can finally reveal ourselves, because humanity has shown us that there are people in this galaxy who can be trusted with the truth." The next morning, Yuna led Minho to a secret chamber, deep beneath the royal palace. The room was hidden behind walls that looked like solid stone but dissolved at her touch, revealing ancient technology that hummed with quiet power. Crystalline displays showed star maps spanning the entire galaxy, and in the center stood a pedestal holding what looked like a sphere of captured starlight. "This is our real history," Una said, activating the displays with a gesture. "The story that no species in the galaxy knows except us." The sphere began to glow, projecting holographic images that filled the chamber. Minho watched in amazement as the history of the galaxy unfolded before his eyes. He saw civilizations in their infancy, primitive species taking their first stumbling steps toward the stars. 50,000 years ago, we were the first beings to achieve true consciousness in this galaxy, Una explained. We evolved beyond physical form, becoming creatures of pure energy and light. We called ourselves the Luminari, and we dedicated our existence to helping younger species grow and develop. The hologram showed golden beings of incredible beauty, moving between worlds, teaching primitive aliens about science, art, and philosophy. They helped species learn to travel between stars, resolve conflicts peacefully, and build civilizations that could last for millennia. "We were teachers, guides, and protectors," Una continued. "For 20,000 years, the galaxy was mostly peaceful because we helped species understand each other. We prevented wars, shared knowledge, and made sure that no one civilization became so powerful that it could dominate the others." Minho studied the images carefully. What changed? The holographic display shifted to show darker scenes. Wars breaking out between species, planets burning, entire civilizations being destroyed in conflicts that lasted for centuries. "We made a mistake," Una said sadly. "We became too trusting. Some of the species we had helped grew jealous of our abilities. They wanted our power for themselves, not to help others, but to conquer and control." The hologram showed Luminari being captured, their energy drained to power terrible weapons. Others were forced to serve as slaves, healing the wounded of armies that immediately went back to war. Some were even killed, their life force harvested, to extend the lives of tyrants and dictators. "The worst part was that they used our own teachings against us," Una explained. "We had taught them about science and technology, and they used that knowledge to create weapons that could hurt us. We had shown them how to cooperate, and they cooperated to hunt us down." Minho felt sick watching the scenes of beauty and wisdom being destroyed by greed and violence. "So you went into hiding?" "We had no choice. Those of us who survived scattered across the galaxy and created new identities. We learned to disguise ourselves as different species, always choosing forms that were unattractive or unremarkable, so we wouldn't draw attention." The hologram showed Luminari transforming themselves, taking on the appearances of various alien races. Some became the gray, bumpy-skinned Krillians. Others disguised themselves as different species on worlds throughout the galaxy. "The Krillian Empire isn't real," Una revealed. "We created it as a place where we could hide in plain sight. An entire civilization of supposedly ugly, harmless beings that no one wanted to conquer or study. We've been maintaining this disguise for over 1,000 years. But you've been watching and waiting," Minho said, beginning to understand. "Exactly. We've been studying the younger species, looking for signs that they might be ready to know the truth. We set up tests, situations where individuals had to choose between appearance and character, between power and wisdom." The hologram showed scenes from across the galaxy, Luminari in disguise interacting with members of various species, always watching, always testing. "Most species failed," Una admitted. "They consistently chose beauty over substance, power over wisdom. They proved they weren't ready to know about us, that they would probably try to exploit our abilities, just like the ancient species did. But humans were different," Minho said. Una smiled and her disguise flickered slightly, revealing hints of her true golden form. "Humans were completely different. In every test we conducted, your people consistently chose character over appearance. Human soldiers would sacrifice themselves for ugly aliens they barely knew. Human diplomats would side with the truth even when it came from unattractive sources. Human leaders would choose wise but plain advisors over beautiful but shallow ones." The hologram showed scenes of humans throughout the galaxy, proving again and again that they could see past surface appearances to recognize true worth. Your choice of me over the beautiful princesses was the final test, Yuna explained. We needed to know if even your greatest hero, offered the most tempting rewards, would still choose based on character rather than looks. And I passed, Minho said quietly. You didn't just pass, you exceeded our wildest hopes. You chose me not reluctantly but gladly. You treated me with genuine respect and kindness, not the condescending pity we usually receive. You proved that humanity as a species is ready to know the truth about us. Minho looked around the chamber, understanding dawning in his eyes. This changes everything, doesn't it? Everything, Yuna agreed. The Luminari are ready to reveal ourselves to the galaxy again, but this time we won't be alone. We'll have humanity as our partners, equals who understand that true strength comes from seeing the value in all beings, regardless of how they look. The hologram faded, leaving them in the soft glow of the ancient technology. Minho realized that his simple choice of an ugly princess had set in motion events that would reshape the entire galaxy. The time had come for the galaxy to learn the truth. In the Grand Assembly Hall of the Galactic Council, representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered for what they thought would be a routine diplomatic meeting. Instead, they were about to witness the most shocking revelation in galactic history. Princess Yuna stood at the center of the massive chamber, still wearing her disguise of gray, bumpy skin and multiple eyes. Beside her, Captain Minho held her hand, offering silent support for what was about to happen. Above them, cameras broadcast the event to billions of beings across the galaxy. Honored delegates, Yuna began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. I have gathered you here today to reveal a truth that has been hidden for over 1,000 years. The alien representatives murmured among themselves, wondering why the ugly Krillian princess was addressing such an important assembly. Many looked annoyed that their time was being wasted by someone they considered insignificant. What you see before you is not real, Yuna continued. The being you know as Princess Yuna of the Krillian Empire is a disguise, a mask worn to hide something far more significant. Without warning, she released the transformation that had hidden her true nature for so long. The change began slowly, her gray skin starting to glow within a light. Then the transformation accelerated, and the disguise fell away like an old coat being discarded. The chamber filled with brilliant golden light as Yuna revealed her true form. Her rough, bumpy skin became smooth and radiant, glowing like captured starlight. Her multiple eyes merged into two perfect orbs that contained the wisdom of ages. Her entire being radiated power and beauty that made every other creature in the chamber seem dim by comparison. Gasps echoed throughout the assembly hall. Several alien delegates fell to their knees, overwhelmed by the presence of something so magnificent. Others backed away in fear, unable to process what they were seeing. I am Yunaleth of the Luminari, she announced, her voice now carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate with the very atoms of the chamber. We are the first intelligent species to evolve in this galaxy, and we have been watching you for 50,000 years. The holographic displays around the chamber activated, showing the true history of the galaxy. Images of golden beings teaching primitive species, guiding their development, and helping them reach for the stars filled the air. Chancellor Vex of the Galactic Council stumbled forward, his 4 eyes wide with shock. The Luminari. But your myths, legends, our oldest stories speak of golden teachers who helped our ancestors, but we thought they were just fairy tales. We were very real, Yuna explained, but we learned that beauty and power make species dangerous to themselves and others. When younger civilizations became greedy for our abilities, we were forced to hide. The displays showed the dark period when Luminari were hunted, captured, and exploited by the very species they had tried to help. The images of their persecution brought shocked silence to the chamber. So we created the greatest deception in galactic history, Yuna continued. We disguised ourselves as the ugliest, most unremarkable species we could imagine. We became the Krillians, being so unattractive that no one would want to study us or steal our power. Around the chamber, other Krillian delegates began to transform. Gray, bumpy skin gave way to golden light, as dozens of Luminari revealed their true forms. The assembly watched in amazement as beings they had dismissed and mocked showed themselves to be the most advanced species in the galaxy. The entire Krillian Empire was a test, Una explained. For 1,000 years we have been studying the younger species, watching how you treat those you consider ugly or inferior. We have created similar scenarios on hundreds of worlds, always. Watching, always testing? Ambassador Kex of the Stellar Alliance raised a shaking hand. Testing for what? For wisdom. For the ability to see past appearances to recognize true worth. For species mature enough to be trusted with the knowledge of our existence. Minho stepped forward, still holding Una's now radiant hand. Most species failed the test, he said, simply. They consistently chose beauty over character, power over wisdom. But humans were different, Una said, her voice filled with warmth. In every scenario we created, your people chose based on character rather than appearance. Human heroes would save ugly aliens without hesitation. Human leaders would choose wise but plain advisors over beautiful but shallow ones. The displays showed examples from across human space, soldiers sacrificing themselves for alien species others considered hideous, diplomats defending the rights of unattractive beings, scientists sharing discoveries with species, others ignored because of their appearance. My marriage to Captain Minho was the final test, Una revealed. We offered your greatest hero any reward he desired, including marriage to the most beautiful princesses in the galaxy. When he chose me, the supposedly ugliest being available, he proved that humanity as a species had the wisdom we've been seeking. Princess Zara of the Crystal People, who had been so angry about being rejected, now stared in shock. She had been competing with a being of pure light and energy, and had lost not because she wasn't beautiful enough, but because her people lacked the character that humans possessed naturally. The age of hiding is over, Una announced to the stunned assembly. The Luminari are ready to reveal ourselves again, but this time we will not stand alone. Humanity has proven they can be trusted with power, that they understand true strength, comes from seeing value in all beings. As her words echoed through the chamber, representatives from hundreds of worlds realized that everything they thought they knew about the galaxy had just changed forever. The ugly species they had mocked and dismissed were actually their ancient teachers, and the humans they had often considered primitive were the only ones wise enough to recognize worth beyond appearance. The galaxy would never be the same again. In the months following the Great Revelation, the galaxy transformed in ways no one had imagined possible. Captain Minho and Princess Una worked together from their new headquarters on Earth, establishing the Human Luminari Alliance that would reshape interstellar politics forever. The first challenge came from species who felt embarrassed and angry about how they had treated the disguised Luminari for centuries. The proud Zephyrians, whose arrogance had nearly destroyed 3 star systems, found it humiliating to learn they had been dismissing their ancient teachers as ugly weaklings. "We demand an explanation," shouted Ambassador Vex during one of the early Alliance meetings. "Why didn't you reveal yourselves sooner? Why let us make fools of ourselves?" Una, now appearing in her true golden form, responded with patience rather than anger. "You weren't ready. Even now, your first reaction is anger rather than learning from your mistakes. This proves exactly why we had to wait for the right partners. But humans handled the revelation differently. Instead of feeling embarrassed, they became excited about the possibilities. Human scientists wanted to learn from Luminari wisdom. Human artists collaborated with beings of pure light to create incredible works of beauty. Human diplomats worked alongside ancient minds to solve conflicts that had lasted for generations. The transformation wasn't just political, it was personal. Across the galaxy, Luminari, who had been hiding in disguise for centuries, finally revealed their true forms. On the industrial world of Mechanica, the ugly maintenance worker, who had been ignored for decades, transformed into a being of brilliant light, shocking his former colleagues who had treated him poorly. On the diplomatic planet of Harmonia, the hideous cleaning lady, who scrubbed the floors of the embassy, revealed herself as an ancient Luminari scholar who had been watching and recording everything for the historical archives. The ambassadors who had stepped around her like she was invisible suddenly realized they had been dismissing someone with more wisdom than their entire council combined. But the most dramatic changes happened in how species treated each other. The beautiful Princess Zara, who had been so confident in her own superiority, found herself working alongside beings she had previously considered beneath her notice. She learned that the ugly janitor on her home planet was actually more intelligent than most of her royal advisors. "I feel so ashamed," she confided to Yuna during a diplomatic dinner. "We always talked about being civilized and advanced, but we were just as shallow as any primitive species." "Shame is the beginning of wisdom," Yuna replied kindly. "What matters now is what you do with this knowledge." Humanity found itself at the center of this new galactic order, not because they demanded it, but because other species naturally turned to them for guidance. When conflicts arose between different alien civilizations, they asked for human mediators who could see past appearances to find fair solutions. Captain Minho, now bearing the title of Ambassador of Earth, traveled between worlds helping to establish the new order. His approach was simple but revolutionary. He treated every being he met with the same respect, whether they were beautiful crystal people or strange creatures with tentacles and scales. "The secret isn't complicated," he explained to a gathering of young diplomats from various species. "Just remember that every being you meet has thoughts, feelings, and dreams just like you do. Their appearance doesn't change that basic truth." The Luminari began sharing their advanced technology and knowledge, but carefully and with conditions. They helped cure diseases, showed species how to repair damaged planets, and taught peaceful conflict resolution. But they made it clear that this knowledge came with responsibilities. "Power without wisdom is dangerous," Yuna explained to the Galactic Council. "We will share our abilities only with those who prove they can use them to help others, not just themselves." Earth became the diplomatic capital of the galaxy, with beings from hundreds of worlds coming to learn the human approach to seeing beyond appearances. The planet that had once been considered a backwater world now hosted the most important negotiations in galactic history. Years passed, and the changes became permanent. Children of various species grew up learning that beauty and worth had nothing to do with how someone looked. Schools taught the importance of character over appearance, and the old prejudices began to fade away. In their private moments, Minho and Yuna would walk through the gardens of their Earth home, both in their true forms. He as a proud human being, she as a radiant creature of light and energy. They had become symbols of what was possible when people chose to see beyond the surface. "Do you think we've really changed the galaxy?" Minho asked one evening as they watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Yuna smiled, her golden light blending with the natural beauty of the moment. "We've given them the chance to change themselves. That's all anyone can do." Above them, ships from dozens of worlds came and went from Earth's spaceports, carrying the message of the Human Luminari Alliance to every corner of the galaxy. The age of judging by appearances was ending, and a new era of wisdom and understanding had begun. The human soldier, who had chosen the ugliest princess, had helped create the most beautiful thing of all, a galaxy where every being could be valued for who they truly were inside.